The Medici family ruled Florence for centuries. They built grand palaces, sponsored amazing art, and shaped history. But behind the glittering gold and priceless paintings, a dark shadow often fell. For some of the Medici children, their lives were cut short, sometimes in shocking ways. Get ready to dive into the stories of 6 young Medici souls who met ends that were anything but ordinary. Number 6, Filippo de Medici, the lost heir. The Grand Ducal Palace, with its formidable stone facade and its inner courtyards echoing with the sounds of courtly life, was usually a place of vibrant activity. Here, in the late 16th century, Grand Duke Francesco I de Medici and his wife Joanna of Austria hoped for a male heir. They already had several daughters, intelligent and lively girls, but the line of succession, the continuation of the powerful Medici name, rested on a son. The pressure was immense. When Filippo was born on May 28, 1577, a collective sigh of relief, loud enough to shake the very foundations of Florence, seemed to ripple through the city. Finally, a boy, a direct heir. The future of the Grand Duchy seemed secure. Filippo was celebrated from the moment he drew his first breath. His birth was marked by grand festivities, bell ringing across the city, and public displays of joy. He was given the title Prince of Tuscany, a title of great weight and expectation. His nursery in the Palazzo Pitti, the family's sprawling new residence across the Arno River, was sumptuously decorated. Rich tapestries warmed the walls, depicting mythological scenes and family triumphs. Venetian glass windows offered views of the Boboli Gardens, a vast landscape of sculptures, fountains, and carefully cultivated greenery designed for the pleasure and prestige of the Medici. From a very young age, Filippo was treated not just as a child, but as a symbol. He was the hope for the future, the tiny vessel carrying the immense legacy of his ancestors. Tutors were assigned to him almost immediately, though their instruction in these early years would have been more focused on basic care and the beginnings of polite behavior. Nurses, wet nurses, and a retinue of servants attended to his every need, ensuring his comfort and safety. He was a precious commodity, perhaps the most precious in the entire Grand Duchy. His parents, Francesco and Joanna, were a complex pair. Francesco was known for his interest in science, alchemy, and the more mysterious arts, often retreating to his private laboratories in the Palazzo Vecchio, the family's older, more political residence. Joanna, a Habsburg princess, carried the weighty lineage of one of Europe's most powerful dynasties. She was a woman of strong will and deep faith, often feeling a bit out of place in the lively, artistic Florentine court. Both parents, however, would have showered affection and attention on their longed-for son. The Florentine court, always alive with whispers and political maneuvering, watched the young prince with keen interest. Every cough, every sneeze, every slight fever would have been met with concern, not just from his parents, but from the entire court, who understood the fragility of life in the 16th century, especially for children. Infant mortality was tragically high, and many families, even royal ones, faced the heartbreak of losing their young. As Filippo grew, his character began to emerge. Descriptions of him from contemporary accounts suggest he was a bright and charming boy, showing the early signs of intelligence and a gentle nature. He would have been seen playing in the vast halls of the palace, perhaps chasing after his older sisters, or exploring the hidden passages that connected the various wings of their immense home. The Boboli Gardens would have been his playground, a place of wonder and discovery, filled with statues, grottos, and exotic plants brought from distant lands. His life outwardly seemed perfect, a golden childhood steeped in luxury and surrounded by the greatest art and minds of the era. He was being prepared, slowly but surely, for a life of leadership, for the day he would inherit the mantle of the Grand Duchy. His days would have been a mix of supervised play, early lessons in Latin and rhetoric, and perhaps even the beginnings of training in horsemanship or courtly dances. The year 1582 began like any other, filled with the usual rhythms of court life. Filippo, now 5 years old, was a vibrant child, his presence a constant source of joy for his family and a symbol of stability for the state. But then, as often happened in those times, illness struck. The nature of the illness was never fully understood by the physicians of the era. They spoke of fevers, of sudden declines, of ailments that seemed to sweep through households with a terrifying speed. For a child like Filippo, even a common cold could turn dangerous. The sanitation was poor, medical knowledge limited, and the concept of germs was centuries away. The sickness took hold quickly. The Grand Ducal physicians, the most skilled in Florence, would have been summoned immediately, their faces etched with concern. They would have tried various remedies, concoctions of herbs, special diets, bleeding, or purges, all based on the prevailing medical theories of the time, which often did more harm than good. The palace, usually bustling, would have grown quiet, the whispers growing louder as news of the prince's worsening condition spread. His parents, Francesco and Joanna, would have been consumed with worry, spending countless hours by his bedside, watching helplessly as their hopes for the future slowly faded. Joanna, in particular, was known to be deeply devoted to her children, and the thought of losing her only son, her precious heir, would have been unbearable. Despite all efforts, young Filippo's strength waned. On March 29, 1582, the little prince, the hope of the Medici line, passed away. He was just 5 years old. The news sent shockwaves through Florence. The city, which had celebrated his birth with such fervor, now plunged into mourning. The Grand Duke and Grand Duchess were devastated. The death of a child, especially a male heir, was a personal tragedy of immense proportions, but also a political crisis. The line of succession was once again uncertain. Filippo was buried with all the solemnity due to a prince. His funeral would have been a grand procession, reflecting the Medici's wealth and power even in their grief. He was laid to rest in the Medici chapels, a sacred space reserved for the most important members of the family, a place of eternal rest carved from marble and decorated with the finest artistic mastery. His brief life, a flicker of light in the grand tapestry of Medici history, left behind a profound sense of loss. His death was a reminder of the fragility of life, even for those born into immense power and privilege, and it forever altered the course of the Grand Ducal succession. His older sister, Maria de Medici, would eventually marry King Henry IV of France, becoming Queen of France, a testament to the Medici's continued political maneuvering despite their personal losses. But for Francesco and Joanna, the loss of Filippo meant the loss of their direct male heir, and the continuation of the Medici line in Florence would eventually fall to others. Number 5. Garzia de Medici, the Lost Boy. Garzia de Medici was born into the dazzling world of Cosimo, the first de Medici, the first Grand Duke of Tuscany, and his Spanish wife, Eleonora di Toledo. He arrived on July 5th, 1547, at a time when the Medici family was solidifying its power in Florence and expanding its influence across Italy and Europe. Garzia was one of many children born to Cosimo and Eleonora, a fertile and ambitious couple who produced a remarkable number of heirs. He was a younger son, part of a lively brood that included older siblings like Francesco, Isabella, Giovanni, and Lucrezia, and younger ones like Ferdinando and Pietro. The ducal nurseries in the Palazzo Vecchio, and later the Grande Palazzo Pitti, would have been filled with the laughter and squabbles of many children. Cosimo and Eleonora were strict but loving parents, keen to ensure their children were well educated and prepared for their roles in shaping the Medici legacy. Their sons were destined for careers in politics, the military, or the church, while their daughters were groomed for politically advantageous marriages. Garzia, like his brothers, would have received a rigorous education from a young age. His days would have been structured around studies in Latin, Greek, history, and rhetoric. He would have learned about warfare, horsemanship, and the arts of courtly life. The best tutors in Florence, scholars and humanists, would have been employed to shape their young minds. Garzia was reportedly a spirited and handsome boy, with the dark hair and expressive eyes he inherited from his Spanish mother. He was known for his keen interest in military matters, a common pursuit for young noblemen of the era. He enjoyed training with weapons, learning tactics and riding horses, perhaps imagining himself as a great commander like the heroes of ancient Rome he read about in his lessons. His father, Cosimo I, a shrewd and powerful ruler, likely saw in Garzia a potential future military leader, a strong hand to maintain the Medici's authority. The family spent their time between their various palaces. The Palazzo Vecchio in the heart of Florence served as the political and administrative center, while the Palazzo Pitti, across the Arno, was the grander residence, offering more space and access to the sprawling Boboli gardens. The Medici villas, scattered across the Tuscan countryside, like the Villa di Castello or the Villa di Poggio a Caiano, provided escapes from the city's heat and political pressures. In these villas, the children would have enjoyed more freedom, engaging in hunting, riding, and exploring the vast estates. Garzia, with his love for the outdoors and his military interests, would have particularly thrived in these settings. Life at the Medici court, while luxurious, was also disciplined. Meals were grand affairs, but children were expected to observe proper etiquette. Religious instruction was paramount, and the family attended Mass regularly. The children were taught to understand their place in the rigid social hierarchy and their duty to the Medici name. They were surrounded by art and beauty, living among masterpieces by Botticelli, Michelangelo, and Donatello, and witnessing the creation of new works commissioned by their father. The air was thick, with the scent of ambition, power, and the subtle perfume of intrigue that always clung to powerful courts. In 1562, a significant event was planned, the marriage of Garzia's older sister Lucrezia to Alfonso II d'Este, the Duke of Ferrara. This was a crucial political alliance for the Medici. To celebrate the union, and perhaps as a part of a larger plan to strengthen ties with the Spanish court, Cosimo I decided to travel to Pisa with his wife Eleonora and several of their children, including Garzia and his older brother, Giovanni. Pisa, a coastal city under Florentine control, offered a change of scenery and was a place where Cosimo could oversee naval affairs and military training. The journey to Pisa would have been a significant undertaking, involving a large retinue of servants, guards, and supplies. The group settled into the ducal residence there, the Palazzo Reale. The warmer climate of Pisa, particularly in the spring, was often considered beneficial. However, coastal areas in 16th century Italy were also known for something less pleasant: malaria. Carried by mosquitoes, this disease was endemic in many swampy, low-lying regions, and Pisa, with its proximity to marshlands, was no exception. It was a silent killer, claiming lives indiscriminately from the poorest peasant to the highest noble. Soon after arriving in Pisa, illness began to spread through the ducal party. The symptoms were characteristic of malaria, debilitating fevers, chills, sweating, and extreme weakness. One of the first to fall gravely ill was Eleonora di Toledo, the Grand Duchess, a woman whose robust health had seemed unbreakable. Her condition worsened rapidly, and the family watched in despair as their beloved mother succumbed to the mysterious fever. She died on December 17, 1562. Her death was a shattering blow to Cosimo and the children. But the tragedy did not end there. Just days after their mother's death, Garzia too fell ill. He was only 15 years old, a young man full of promise and vitality. The same terrifying symptoms that had claimed his mother now attacked him. The physicians, already exhausted and bewildered by Eleonora's passing, tried their best. They administered remedies, but their efforts were futile against a disease they did not understand. Garzia's condition deteriorated rapidly. The court was plunged into a fresh wave of grief, compounded by the recent loss of the Grand Duchess. Adding to the unbearable sorrow, Garzia's older brother, Giovanni, who was a cardinal and destined for a prominent career in the church, also fell sick around the same time. Giovanni, too, would succumb to the illness, dying shortly before Garzia, or just days after him. The exact order sometimes debated by historians, but the fact of their near simultaneous deaths undeniable. The loss of three prominent members of the ducal family, one after the other, in such quick succession was almost unthinkable. Garzia de Medici died on December 12, 1562, just days before or after his mother and brother. The cause was almost certainly malaria, though rumors and dark whispers would later emerge, suggesting foul play, even implying that Cosimo himself had somehow been involved, though these claims were almost certainly unfounded and the result of courtly intrigue and gossip. The reality was a far more common and devastating enemy disease. His body, like his mother's and brother's, would have been prepared for the solemn journey back to Florence. The return to the capital would have been a sorrowful procession, the previous hopes for a joyous family gathering replaced by the grim reality of multiple coffins. Garzia was buried in the Medici chapels alongside his family. His death was a profound personal tragedy for Cosimo I, who had lost a devoted wife and two promising sons in the span of a few weeks. The family, so strong and seemingly invincible, was reminded of the fragility of life, even for those at the pinnacle of power. Garzia's story is a stark reminder of the ever-present threat of disease in the 16th century, and how it could sweep away even the most privileged lives. His potential, his aspirations for a military career all vanished in the grip of a devastating illness. Number 4, Giovanni de Medici, the young cardinal. Giovanni de Medici was born on May 10th, 1543, a son of Grand Duke Cosimo I de Medici and Eleonora di Toledo. He was part of a large and energetic family, growing up alongside brothers and sisters in the heart of Medici power. Unlike many of his siblings, Giovanni was not destined for a political marriage or a military career. From a very young age, he was marked for a life in the church. This was a common strategy for powerful European families. Placing a son in a high ecclesiastical position not only brought immense prestige and influence, but also secured a valuable ally within the powerful structure of the Catholic Church. Giovanni's early life was steeped in religious instruction and scholarly pursuits. He received a rigorous education learning Latin, Greek, theology, and philosophy. His tutors were among the most learned men in Florence, fostering his natural intelligence and piety. He was seen as serious, devout, and possessing a deep commitment to his religious calling. He would have spent his days in quiet study, attending Mass, and participating in religious ceremonies within the lavish ducal chapels. Unlike his more boisterous brothers who might have been drawn to hunting or military exercises, Giovanni found solace and purpose in his books and prayers. His father, Cosimo I, had grand ambitions for Giovanni. He envisioned his son rising to the highest ranks of the church, perhaps even becoming pope one day. Such an achievement would have cemented the Medici family's influence, not only in Italy, but across all of Christendom. And Cosimo used his considerable political skills and connections to advance Giovanni's career swiftly. By the age of 16, a remarkable feat, Giovanni was elevated to the rank of cardinal. This was a testament to Cosimo's power and his strategic placement of his children. Giovanni became known as the Cardinal of Florence, a powerful figure in his own right, despite his youth. As a cardinal, Giovanni held significant responsibilities. He would have been involved in church administration, attending consistories, and advising the Pope. He resided in Rome for periods, experiencing the vibrant, complex, and often politically charged world of the Vatican. His presence in Rome strengthened the Medici's diplomatic ties with the Holy See, serving as a direct line of communication and influence for his father in Florence. Even as a young man, he was expected to navigate the intricate world of Renaissance politics, balancing his spiritual duties with the demands of his family's secular power. In 1562, a family journey was planned to Pisa. Cosimo I, Eleonora di Toledo, and several of their children, including Giovanni and his younger brother Garzia, traveled to the coastal city. The purpose was ostensibly to oversee military training and enjoy the warmer climate. Pisa, however, was also known for its marshlands, which were breeding grounds for mosquitoes carrying malaria, a disease that would prove to be a silent, deadly force. Tragedy struck the ducal party with shocking speed. The Grand Duchess Eleonora di Toledo, a strong and resilient woman, was the first to fall ill. She suffered from a severe fever, chills, and weakness, symptoms now recognized as typical of malaria. Despite the efforts of the era's most renowned physicians, her condition worsened. She passed away on December 17th, 1562. Her death was a devastating blow to the family and to Cosimo, who had relied heavily on her counsel and strength. But the sorrow did not end there. The illness, like an invisible plague, continued its cruel sweep through the family. Giovanni, the young cardinal, also succumbed to the same debilitating fever. He was only 19 years old. His promising career in the church cut short before it had truly blossomed. His intellectual rigor and pious dedication, all the hopes his father had placed upon him for a papal future, were extinguished by the relentless disease. The doctors, powerless against the unknown enemy, could only watch as his life ebbed away. To compound the immense grief, Giovanni's younger brother, Garzia, who had also fallen ill, died around the same time. The exact sequence of their deaths sometimes varies in historical accounts, but the fact remains Cosimo and Eleonora lost 3 beloved family members, their wife and 2 sons, within a matter of weeks, all to the same mysterious illness. The public explanation was that they died of a malignant fever, a term often used to describe conditions like malaria or typhus, which were poorly understood and often fatal. The loss of Giovanni was particularly poignant for Cosimo. He had invested so much in his son's ecclesiastical career, seeing it as a vital pillar of Medici power. Giovanni's body, along with those of his mother and brother, would have been transported back to Florence for solemn burial. The Medici chapels, a grand testament to the family's ambition and wealth, became a somber resting place for these lost lives. Whispers and dark rumors, fueled by political rivals and sensationalists, circulated after the deaths. Some suggested that Cosimo himself had poisoned Giovanni, perhaps out of anger or political convenience. These rumors were never substantiated and are widely dismissed by modern historians as baseless gossip, likely stemming from the intense rivalries and suspicions that pervaded Renaissance courts. The far more probable and tragic reality was the widespread and devastating impact of malaria, a disease that posed a constant threat in 16th century Italy, especially in coastal areas. Giovanni's life, though brief, showcased the immense power and influence of the Medici family. He was a cardinal at an age when most young men were just beginning their careers. His dedication to his studies and his spiritual path, combined with his family's ambition, set him on a trajectory that could have led him to the very pinnacle of the church. His untimely death was a profound reminder of the precariousness of life in an age before modern medicine, where even the most privileged were not immune to the silent, invisible threats that lurked in the environment. His story remains a tragic footnote in the grand history of the Medici, a reminder of the brilliant futures that were never realized. Number 3. Lucrezia de Medici, the Poisoned Duchess. Lucrezia de Medici was born on February 14, 1545, another daughter of the formidable Grand Duke Cosimo, the first de Medici, and his Spanish wife, Eleonora di Toledo. She grew up in the opulent and politically charged environment of the Florentine court. As a Medici daughter, her destiny was clear from a young age. She was to be married off to a powerful European noble, securing a strategic alliance that would benefit her family's growing power. Her upbringing was typical for a noble girl of the era, focusing on piety, domestic management, languages, and the social graces necessary to manage a grand household and represent her family's prestige. Lucrezia was known for her beauty and her gentle nature. She possessed the classic Medici features, a blend of her Italian father's shrewdness and her Spanish mother's elegance. She was educated in the arts of embroidery, music, and poetry, skills deemed essential for a lady of her standing. She would have been trained to oversee servants, manage budgets, and engage in polite conversation at courtly functions. In her life within the grand palaces of Florence, whether it was the Palazzo Vecchio or the newer, more comfortable Palazzo Pitti, was one of luxury and intense preparation for her future role as a duchess. Her parents, Cosimo and Eleonora, were highly ambitious. They carefully arranged their children's marriages to forge powerful alliances. For Lucrezia, the chosen match was Alfonso II d'Este, the Duke of Ferrara, a powerful and influential ruler whose family had long been rivals, and sometimes allies, of the Medici. The Este family was known for its lavish court, its patronage of the arts, and its strategic location in northern Italy. The marriage was intended to solidify a new bond between the two ducal houses, transforming old rivalries into a strong political friendship. The marriage negotiations were protracted and complex, as such high-stakes unions always were, but eventually an agreement was reached. Lucrezia was to become the Duchess of Ferrara. The wedding, held in Florence in 1560, was a grand affair, a spectacle of wealth and power. The city celebrated with banquets, parades, and fireworks. Lucrezia, at just 15 years old, dressed in the finest silks and jewels, would have been the center of attention, a young woman stepping into a new, formidable role. Shortly after the wedding, Lucrezia made the journey to Ferrara, her new home. It was a departure, not just from her family, but from the familiar landscapes and customs of Florence. Ferrara was a different court, with its own intricate politics and social dynamics. Alfonso II d'Este, her new husband, was a powerful and somewhat stern figure, and their marriage was one of political convenience rather than personal affection. Lucrezia was expected to adapt quickly to her new life, to produce heirs, and to uphold the honor of both the Medici and Este families. Her time in Ferrara was tragically short. Just a little over a year after her grand wedding, news reached Florence that Lucrezia was gravely ill. The reports from Ferrara were vague, speaking of a sudden and severe decline in her health. Symptoms included fever, weakness, and discomfort. The physicians at the Este court, much like those in Florence, struggled to understand and combat the mysterious illness that gripped the young duchess. The news was met with immense concern in Florence. Cosimo I and Eleonora were deeply worried. Lucrezia was their daughter, and her sudden illness, so far from home, would have caused them great distress. They sent their own Florentine doctors to Ferrara, hoping that their expertise might offer some solution, or at least provide clearer information about their daughter's condition. But even these efforts proved to be in vain. Lucrezia de Medici died on April 21st, 1561, at the tender age of 16. The official cause of death given by the Este court was a malignant fever. However, almost immediately, whispers began to circulate, dark and insidious, suggesting a more sinister truth. Many believed, and continue to believe to this day, that Lucrezia was poisoned. The rumors pointed directly at her husband, Alfonso II d'Este. Why would he poison his young wife? The motives suggested were varied. Some believed he was disappointed that she had not yet produced an heir, or perhaps that he found her frail or unsuitable for his court. Others whispered of a desire to marry someone else, someone who might bring him even greater political advantage. The lack of clarity around her illness and the suddenness of her death fueled these suspicions. The fact that he quickly remarried shortly after Lucrezia's death only added to the public speculation. The Medici family, despite their immense power, found themselves in a difficult position. Publicly, they maintained the official explanation of death by natural causes to avoid a diplomatic crisis with the powerful Este family. A direct accusation of murder would have led to open conflict, something Cosimo I, for all his power, wished to avoid if possible. However, it is widely believed that Cosimo and Eleonora harbored strong suspicions, and that they never truly believed their daughter died of natural causes. The truth remained obscured, trapped in the polite diplomatic language of the courts. Lucrezia was buried in Ferrara. Her tragic story became a haunting tale within the Medici family annals and among the courts of Italy. Her death, so young and under such suspicious circumstances, underscored the dangerous realities of political marriages in the Renaissance, where young women were often pawns in a larger game of power, and where their lives could be easily extinguished, sometimes without consequence for those responsible. Her short life, a brief flicker of a duchess, is a stark reminder of the hidden dangers and the often unspoken tragedies behind the glittering facade of Renaissance courts. Number 2. Maria de Medici, the Lost Bride. Maria de Medici, born on April 3, 1540, was the eldest daughter of Cosimo I de Medici, the first Grand Duke of Tuscany, and his Spanish wife Eleonora di Toledo. As the firstborn daughter of such powerful parents, Maria's upbringing was meticulously planned. She was raised in the heart of Medici power, initially within the imposing walls of the Palazzo Vecchio and later in the grander, more comfortable Palazzo Pitti. Her childhood was steeped in luxury, surrounded by art, scholarship, and the constant hum of political activity that characterized the Florentine court. From a very young age, Maria would have been educated in all the skills considered essential for a noblewoman of her standing. This included languages, music, drawing, embroidery, and most importantly, the art of courtly etiquette and household management. Her tutors would have instilled in her the importance of piety, humility, and the duties that came with her prestigious birth. As the eldest daughter, she was particularly groomed for a politically advantageous marriage, a key tool in her father's strategy to solidify and expand Medici influence across Europe. Maria was reportedly a bright and intelligent young woman, described by her contemporaries as beautiful and graceful. She inherited her mother's elegance and her father's sharp mind. She would have observed the intricate dance of diplomacy and power that unfolded daily in her parents' court, preparing her for the complexities of a future ducal or royal household. Her days would have been a structured routine of lessons, religious observance, and carefully supervised interactions. The extensive gardens of the Medici villas, like those at Castello, might have offered some respite, an opportunity for recreation, but even playtime would have been guided by the expectations of her rank. As Maria grew older, the matter of her marriage became a central focus for her parents. Cosimo I was a master of political maneuvering, and he sought the most powerful alliance possible for his eldest daughter. After careful consideration and extensive negotiations, a truly grand match was secured. Maria was betrothed to Alfonso II d'Este, the Duke of Ferrara, a ruler from one of Italy's most ancient and powerful princely families. This alliance promised to strengthen the Medici's position in northern Italy and beyond, bringing two formidable dynasties closer together. The betrothal was a cause for great celebration in Florence. The prospect of such a prestigious union for the Grand Duke's eldest daughter filled the court with excitement. The preparations for the wedding, which would undoubtedly be a magnificent spectacle, would have begun. Maria, at 17 years old, would have been preparing herself for a new life, a new court, and the weighty responsibilities of becoming a duchess. She would have been contemplating the journey to Ferrara, the separation from her family, and the challenges of adapting to a new environment and a new husband. However, fate, in the cruelest of twists, intervened before the marriage could take place. In the late summer of 1557, Maria de Medici fell ill. The symptoms were characteristic of the fevers that often swept through 16th century Italy, a sudden onset of high temperature, chills, sweating, and a rapid deterioration of her health. While the exact diagnosis is not known with certainty, the prevailing historical consensus points to malaria, a common and often fatal disease in a time before modern medicine, or perhaps another virulent fever. The Medici court physicians, the best available in Florence, were immediately summoned to her bedside. They would have tried every known remedy of the era, from bleeding to various herbal concoctions, all based on the limited medical understanding of the time. Her parents, Cosimo and Eleonora, would have been overcome with worry, spending countless hours watching over their beloved eldest daughter. The Grand Duke, usually so composed and strategic, would have felt the agonizing helplessness of a father facing his child's suffering. The Grand Duchess, known for her strong will, would have been deeply distressed, her maternal instincts overriding her usual regal demeanor. Despite all efforts, Maria's condition worsened. Her young life, so full of promise and so carefully prepared for a future of power and prestige, began to slip away. On November 19, 1557, Maria de Medici died. She was just 17 years old. The loss was a devastating blow to the Medici family. Not only was it a profound personal tragedy for her parents and siblings, but it also represented a significant political setback. The planned marriage to Alfonso II d'Este, a crucial alliance for Cosimo I, was now shattered. The death of such a prominent young woman, a prospective duchess, plunged Florence into mourning. The Grand Ducal Palace, usually buzzing with life and courtly intrigue, was filled with a heavy silence of grief. Maria was buried with all the solemnity and honor due to a Medici princess. Her remains were laid to rest in the Medici chapels, a testament to her family's enduring power even in sorrow. The loss of Maria meant that Cosimo had to find another daughter to marry Alfonso II d'Este to secure the alliance. Ultimately, it would be Lucrezia, Maria's younger sister, who would be given in marriage to the Duke of Ferrara a few years later. As seen in her own chapter, Lucrezia's fate would also be tragically short and surrounded by suspicion. Maria de Medici's story is a poignant reminder of the fragility of life in the Renaissance, even for those at the very top of the social ladder. Despite all the wealth, power, and medical attention available to the Medici, they were ultimately powerless against the invisible threats of disease. Her death before she could even embark on her married life stands as a testament to the unpredictable nature of existence in the 16th century, where a high-ranking political match could be undone in an instant by the cruel hand of illness. Number 1. Isabella de Medici, the Strangled Duchess. Isabella de Medici was born on August 31st, 1542, the third daughter of Cosimo I de Medici, Grand Duke of Tuscany, and Eleonora di Toledo. From an early age, Isabella stood out. She was known for her exceptional beauty, intelligence, and a spirited, independent nature that was unusual for women of her time, especially those born into such a rigid social hierarchy. She was given a comprehensive education far beyond typical for women, including Latin, music, poetry, and a deep appreciation for the arts. She was also an accomplished musician and singer, and she enjoyed hunting and riding, activities more commonly associated with men. Her wit and charm made her a favorite at the Florentine court. Her parents, astute political strategists, recognized Isabella's unique qualities. She was seen as a valuable asset in their network of alliances. At the young age of 11, in 1553, she was betrothed to Paolo Giordano Orsini, the Duke of Bracciano. The Orsini family was one of the most powerful and ancient noble families in Rome, controlling vast territories and wielding significant influence. This marriage was a strategic move by Cosimo I to strengthen his ties with the Roman nobility and secure a powerful ally in the Papal States. The marriage took place in 1558, when Isabella was 16 years old. However, unlike many noble marriages, Isabella did not immediately move to her husband's home in Bracciano near Rome. Instead, due to the young age of both Paolo Giordano and Isabella, and perhaps because Cosimo I wanted to keep his intelligent and beloved daughter close, she remained at the Medici court in Florence, largely under her father's protection. This arrangement was unusual, allowing Isabella a degree of freedom and autonomy that most married noble women of her era did not possess. She presided over her own household in the Palazzo Pitti, maintaining a separate court and enjoying a vibrant social life. In Florence, Isabella continued to flourish. She became a patron of the arts and letters, much like her father. She hosted intellectual gatherings, supported musicians, and engaged in lively discussions. Her intelligence and strong personality were evident to all. While her husband, Paolo Giordano, visited periodically, he also spent considerable time engaged in military campaigns and managing his own estates. The relationship, while perhaps lacking deep emotional intimacy, seemed to function on a level of mutual respect, at least outwardly. However, Isabella's unusual independence and her close friendships, particularly with her husband's cousin, Troilo Orsini, began to generate whispers. In the strict, honor-obsessed world of the Italian Renaissance nobility, a woman's reputation was paramount. Any hint of impropriety, real or imagined, could bring shame upon her family and potentially threaten the fragile political alliances built through marriage. While there is no definitive proof of an affair, the intense scrutiny surrounding Isabella's life at court, combined with her independent spirit, made her vulnerable to gossip and suspicion. As time went on, tensions began to rise within the Medici family. Cosimo I was becoming increasingly frail, and his son Francesco, who would succeed him as Grand Duke, was known to be less tolerant of the kind of independence Isabella enjoyed. Paolo Giordano Orsini, her husband, was also a powerful and volatile man, known for his violent temper and his insistence on upholding his family's honor. The summer of 1576 brought the tragic climax to Isabella's life. She was at the Medici villa of Cerreto Guidi, a beautiful hunting lodge nestled in the Tuscan countryside. On July 16, 1576, Isabella de Medici was found dead. The official report stated that she died suddenly while washing her hair, possibly from a heart attack or an apoplectic fit. However, this explanation was widely disbelieved, both at the time and by later historians. The truth, as it is now generally accepted, is far more brutal. Isabella was murdered. Her husband, Paolo Giordano Orsini, strangled her. The motive was believed to be jealousy or a perceived stain on his honor, fueled by the persistent rumors of her alleged infidelity. But the most shocking aspect of Isabella's death was not just the act itself, but the strong likelihood that it occurred with the explicit knowledge and tacit consent of her father, Cosimo I, or her brother, Francesco I. For a woman of Isabella's standing to be murdered by her husband without immediate and furious retribution from her powerful family was almost unthinkable unless the family itself had sanctioned it. In the hierarchical society of the Renaissance, maintaining family honor and reputation was paramount, sometimes even outweighing the life of an individual. If Isabella's conduct was indeed seen as bringing dishonor to the Medici name, her powerful male relatives might have chosen to sacrifice her to preserve the family's image and their political alliances. The lack of any official investigation, the hurried burial, and the complete absence of reprisal against Paolo Giordano all point to a grim reality. Isabella's death was a calculated act to uphold the perceived honor of two powerful families. Isabella was buried quickly and quietly in the Medici chapels in Florence, far from the grand public spectacle that usually accompanied the death of a Medici princess. Her story became a dark and enduring legend, a chilling example of the extreme measures taken to protect patriarchal honor in the Renaissance. While the details of her life showed a vibrant, intelligent woman striving for independence, her death revealed the harsh limits placed on women, even those born into the most powerful families. Her tragic end at the age of 34 remains one of the darkest chapters in the long and complex history of the Medici.